their humanity taken away. It's a living brain jammed inside a cybernetic body with a heart of steel. All emotions removed.
Why no emotion?
Because it hurts.
I don't know if this video is coming out before the ranking one or after, but I did a little bit about me changing my little goblin sprite, so if that one comes out after this, I'm just gonna look really stupid. Anyway, Doctor Who has a lot of very iconic and recognizable enemies. The Daleks, the Slitheen, the Weeping Angels, which all have their own horror aspects to them in a way. Except the Daleks, I don't know what's going on with the Daleks. But none of them are quite as horrifying as the Cybermen. Sup freaks, it's me, your boy, and today I will be discussing the hidden body horror behind the Cybermen and why it might just be a fate worse than death. Despite the Cybermen existing since the very first Doctor, I will mostly just be talking about the appearances they make in season 2 through 10, as that's all the Cybermen appearances I've actually watched. It's quite difficult to pinpoint a specific origin of the Cybermen, as they appear multiple times in different civilizations. At one point, the Doctor says something along the lines of, "There are Cybermen in every universe eventually." This implies that, in some sense, the Cybermen are inevitable. The human race keeps pushing forward and progressing technology, trying to figure out the answers to death and injury, and at the end of all of it, there is the Cybermen. Humans just can't keep themselves from trying to improve their lifespans in every universe, but it always leads to the same thing, the end of the human race. I find it amazing just how well the Cybermen explore what exactly makes someone human. When you remove their ability to die, or get injured, or feel pain, eat, sleep, procreate, the Cybermen are what remains. And it also leads me to wonder, if there are Cybermen in every universe eventually, what about all the universes the Doctor didn't get to? Were there still people who managed to defeat them, or were they simply not enough? But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, let's take a look at some of the many ways the Cybermen came to be. In their first appearance in Season 2, Episodes 5 and 6, the Doctor, Rose and Mickey wind up in an alternate, considerably more technologically advanced universe. In this universe is a man named John Lumick, who is head of a large corporation named the Cybers Industries. Wink wink. The Cybers Industries is shown to have a hand in almost everything technologically advanced, their brand plastered practically everywhere. John Lumick at this time is very close to dying, but is determined to live forever. And so, he begins creating the Cybermen by experimenting on the homeless, holy fuck, and eventually uses the Cybers Industry branded earpods to overthrow the city and begin turning people into Cybermen against their own will. This is actually one of my favourite storylines for the Cybermen because it feels uncomfortably real, especially nowadays. It somehow manages to mimic what some people in power would most likely do if they were on their deathbed. Not naming any names. I can't entirely remember what happens on Hedgewick's world or who created them, and unfortunately I don't have the season that episode is in, but if anyone in the comments has a general description of what happens, feel free to let me know. I do, however, vividly remember Season 10, Episode 11, where on a Mondasian colony ship, we see the Cybermen in the beginning of their creation by this doctor guy, I don't know his name, and none other than the Master himself. This episode is where we not only get to see the Cybermen created to quote-unquote heal the dying people of the city, but we get a much deeper and more personal look into the horrifying creation process of the Cybermen, which I can assure you I will be getting to. But before we do, let's take a quick look at the general ins and outs of a Cyberman, what they do, what their abilities are, and what their breaking point is based off of mostly context clues. Using the Doctor's description of the Cybermen as a reference, the Cybermen are what used to be people, but were converted into this, most likely against their own will. They are a human brain stuffed inside a robotic body with a heart of pure steel and all emotions removed. They are also shown to have the main nervous system strewn about the metal body, supposedly still connected to the brain. This means that despite now being a robot, they can very much still feel pain. More on that later. Their brains are hooked up to a mainframe of some sorts, giving them the ability to not only retain knowledge, but I'm assuming also store it and look it up later. This also allows them to be easily influenced or programmed, which is why all they seek to do is create more Cybermen. They believe they have been freed. They believe they are helping people. There are a few things that are shown to hurt or kill a Cyberman throughout the show. Regular guns don't work, but electricity guns and shocks typically fry their systems. Another thing that's shown to kill a Cyberman is taking out its emotional inhibitor. Oh, sorry, did I not mention the emotional inhibitors? Oh, silly me. Remember how I said the Cybermen have all of their emotions removed? Well, that's not entirely true. They actually have them suppressed by an emotional inhibitor, wired up to their steel heart. There is a very important reason as to why they suppress the emotions. Like I said, despite the Cybermen being robots now, they can still feel pain. Now, imagine this for me. You have your entire body removed. All that remains of you is your brain and central nervous system, but you're not dead, and you can still feel. Then, your brain is stuffed into a metal case, and your fully exposed nerves are strung out across a new body, no protection to be found. That's gotta fucking hurt. The reason the Cybermen don't react to this pain isn't in any way because they don't feel it, they definitely do. It's because they physically can't react anymore. However, once the emotional inhibitor is removed, all of that emotion comes rushing back in. Not only the realization of what they've been forced to become, but the most unbearable pain you could imagine hits them all at once. No wonder that destroys a Cyberman. They can also be killed by the power of fatherly love apparently, but we just won't talk about that right now. In Season 5, Episode 12, Amy Pond encounters a battered up Cyberman next to the Pandorica, which quickly begins to attack. This implies some new information about the Cybermen. This Cyberman is supposedly from a long-gone Cyberman empire that was destroyed, making this one the last survivor, using the word survivor lightly. This definitely proves that Cybermen live significantly longer than humans, never aging or dying, as God knows how long this thing has been down here. However, this also implies that a Cyberman's form can deteriorate and wither over time if not given proper maintenance. Just look at it. Its head is fallen off, its left arm is missing. We didn't even get to see the full body until it shows up. God knows what kind of state that was in before it put itself back together. However, one thing we can be sure of is that despite how long it was down there and how badly it withered, it never died. It can't die. It was alive that entire time. In Season 8, Episode 11, the Cybermen gain the new ability to now reanimate literal corpses and turn them into Cybermen as well. Obviously this backfires, as this tactic is less effective for keeping the Cybermen in line and stopping them from rebelling, but if they were to ever succeed in this form of Cybermen, they would have an army larger than the entire human race probably. They have also been shown to be able to remember details from their past life, such as their name, which just adds another level of how fucked up they are, really. Some Cybermen's abilities include electric shocks through touch, which instantly kill someone, shooting cyber-branded tranquilizer darts from their fingers, rocket boots, and mind control through the use of earpieces. And if all of that information wasn't horrifying enough to you, let me tell you the story of one of my favourite two-part finales of a Doctor Who series of all time, and the scariest the Cybermen have ever been yet. World Enough and Time, and the Doctor Falls. Season 10 of Doctor Who is one of the most underrated seasons I think I've ever come across. Despite it being one of the best in my opinion, it hardly ever gets talked about, and I cannot for the life of me figure out why. I mean, I get that Capaldi isn't everyone's favourite Doctor, and this is the season that was immediately followed by Jodie Whittaker's first season, which is definitely a significant downgrade, but that causes a lot of people to think that the quote-unquote fall-off point of Doctor Who started here, And I am here to say, nah. This season is so fucking well written, dude. Please just give it a chance, god damn. Despite the many strengths this season has, however, there is one thing that sticks out among the rest, and of course is the thing we'll be talking about today. The two-part finale. There is so much I could analyse in this finale alone, from the Doctor's emotional journey throughout it, to the fate of Missy and what it symbolised, even to the environment the finale is set in, but unfortunately this video isn't about any of that. It's about two things in particular. The Cybermen and Bill Potts. Or perhaps they belong in the same category. Just before I begin, I do want to give a spoiler warning for these two episodes. If you have the time, please consider going and checking out Season 10 if you haven't already. Not only will it help to make sense of what I'm going to be discussing in this segment, but it'll be a great watch as well. Are they gone? Good. Anyway. This may be a hot take for some, but I think that the horror aspect, foreshadowing, and build up to Bill's eventual fate in the first episode is so masterfully done that it could even rival The Waters of Mars for me as my favourite horror-based episode in all of Doctor Who. The episode starts by immediately killing her off, which presents us with a horrifying and subversive fate for her that we presume to be the worst case scenario for Bill, as we've grown to care about her deeply over the course of the series. We are relieved to find her still alive a few scenes later, but what we don't know is that what we just saw was actually a mercy. They've just shown us what we think is the worst possible outcome for Bill, only to turn around and do something worse. In the hospital, we get a much closer look at the Cybermen than we ever have before. Whenever we saw the Cybermen before, it was always after they'd been created, but here, we get to see the prototypes. It's clear that emotional inhibitors haven't been invented yet, or at least not perfected, so not only are the prototypes in constant pain, but they know it. They stumble around, clutching at their medicine poles like a walking stick, a stark contrast to the Cybermen's typical harsh, robotic, but confident movements. And when they aren't moving around, they just sit there, immobile and in pain. They've been given buttons to press in order to call for help, but they're consistently ignored by the hospital staff. Throughout the entire episode, it's made clear to us that these things' existence is nothing but suffering, shown through the perspective of Bill herself. And then, in the final cruel end to the episode, Bill is transformed into the first Cyberman, treated by the Master as the punchline of a sick joke, and, in a way, it is. But while this is a tragic and terrifying end to Bill, what exactly does it mean for her character? This is explored in the second installment in the finale, as Bill, still conscious and in control of her will, grapples with the reality that was forced onto her. But I believe there is much more depth to her fate than meets the eye. If there is one thing the Cybermen represent, it is extreme, unwilling conformity. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't think it was a coincidence that the first openly queer companion that isn't Jack Harkness was the companion that was subjected to this fate. That's right, guys. I believe that the Cybermen are a homophobia allegory. Why are you booing me? I'm right! Okay, in all seriousness, this is just my opinion, but I feel like this just makes way too much sense to write it off as nothing, especially in an analysis video. I'm fairly certain the majority of my audience won't be too upset with this take, as, well, I know the kind of people my content attracts. But for the couple of die-hard Doctor Who fans who just happened to stumble across my video and are currently writing a comment along the lines of this video may just not be for you. Sorry. I also believe that the Cybermen aren't strictly an allegory for homophobia, but all forms of discrimination. However, I feel that the theme of homophobia is the most prominent here, which is why that is the topic I'm choosing to discuss. We see, even from the first episode of the season, that Bill, despite being openly a lesbian, still occasionally struggles with very subtle discrimination from the people around her. This isn't very obvious on first watch, but from the first scene with her aunt, who makes an offhanded comment in which she mentions Bill one day finding a boyfriend, to which she responds with an irritated comment about her not liking men under her breath, we see that she seems to have a rather complicated relationship with her aunt in regards to her sexuality. There are multiple ways that we could interpret this scene. On the one hand, Bill making a comment about her sexuality under her breath, deliberately making it so her aunt can't hear, could imply that she hasn't told her aunt and is scared to do so. To her aunt is very much a mother figure, and coming out to parents or parental figures can be very scary for some people, especially when said person doesn't seem to be very open-minded. On the other hand, we can interpret that Bill has told her aunt about it, but she consistently ignores the fact that her niece is a lesbian and continues to make these comments, which could tell us that the reason Bill reacted with such irritation is that she's sick of the comments and just doesn't have the energy to argue with her anymore. Whichever way we interpret it, it tells us that Bill, while living in a safe environment and being openly queer, doesn't mean she isn't dealing with subtle discrimination or the fear of being discriminated against in her day-to-day life. Bill, on top of being openly queer, is also very outgoing, confident, and free-spirited, so I think it's fairly safe to assume that her identity means quite a lot to her, and her sexuality would naturally play a big part in that, as it does for many people. She is essentially everything the Cybermen are not. She is a black, lesbian woman who has been shown to be empathetic, kind, confident, and curious. She wears bright, colourful clothes, she enjoys Roman history, she is happy in her identity. She is everything the Cybermen want to remove. She is unique. This is exactly what makes the realization that she's been turned into a Cyberman so crushing for her. Obviously, it would be crushing for anyone, but having everything that she considered a part of her identity stripped away from her like this is a nightmare. And I just love how, instead of your average Doctor Who finale, a majority of this episode consists of the Doctor and Bill just talking. It just feels so hopeless and real, just two friends having a deep conversation. I think at some point during these conversations, Bill says something along the lines of, "I don't really see the point of living if I can't be me." And I think that line alone captures everything I've just said and more. Because she can't be her anymore. Sure, she's still in her mind, but she can never wear her favourite clothes, or eat her favourite food, or kiss another woman ever again. And at what point does that kind of thing change who you are forever? But I think what drives my point home is the real death of Bill Parks. Bill dies after the war between the Cybermen and the people inhabiting the cabin. She's the last thing standing, and she uses the last of her strength to try and carry the Doctor to safety. Of course, this is when she's approached by the pilot, Bill's love interest from the first episode, who offers to take her with her and travel the stars together. This isn't the first time she'd offered this, of course, but this time, she accepts. She leaves the hollow, soulless shell of the Cyberman behind, and hand in hand with another woman, she chooses to become the truest form of herself that she's ever been. Eyes are a theme that is very prominent in Season 10 of Doctor Who, especially in regards to Bill. They say that the eyes are the window of the soul, and if that's the case, I don't think it's a coincidence that it's Bill's tears that kept the Doctor alive. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. I've been very passionate about this subject for quite a while, so finally getting my thoughts out there is great. I hope you enjoyed, and please do let me know if you want to see more stuff like this. I am planning on making more videos on Doctor Who in the future, so yeah. Bye!